I hope I'm audible. Let me share my PPT. Share screen. Share. Then. So is my PPT visible? Can somebody kindly tell me if the PPT is visible? Okay, yes, visible. Thank you so much. Okay, so today's topic, I'm sure you are aware that it is how to uh, prepare a good multiple choice question paper, or how to frame good multiple choice questions, right? So what are the learning outcomes that we are expecting today uh, for from this webinar? First is that after the webinar, you will be able to identify the terminology that is used in framing of MCQs. Second is that you will be able to evaluate existing multiple choice items by using commonly accepted criteria to identify specific flaws in the items. And of course, we'll be discussing the criteria first, and then you will be also able to improve poorly written multiple choice items by correcting the flaws that they contain. And last but not the least, you'll be able to construct well written multiple choice items that measure given learning outcomes. So let us start with the anatomy of a multiple choice item. I'm sure most of you would know about it, but still let us have it formally. MCQ has two parts, a stem and alternatives. So what is the stem? Stem is the question. It sets the context, or it defines the problem whose solution we are asking from the student. And alternatives are the choices that we give to the students which contain the answer to the question given in the stem. And in alternatives, we have two kind of alternatives. One is the key, which is the correct answer or the correct solution. It is called the key. And then the rest are distractors. Distractors are other options which may be very close to the correct answer, right? So the student will use his discretion, his knowledge, his competence, his analytical powers, his cognitive processes to determine what is the correct answer and which ones are incorrect. Now let us look at one example. So the example here is this. Supposing I give you this MCQ, what kind of a test item is this question? So this is the stem. The question, what kind of a test item is this question? This is the stem. And A, B, C, D, the four other parts are the alternatives. Out of these alternatives, which one do you think is the correct answer? The correct answer is multiple choice question. This is, so that we will call as the key. And then the others are all distractors. Like this is not a true false question. This is not a short answer question. This is not a matching type of question. So these are all distractors. The correct answer is multiple choice question. And that is the key, that we will call it as a key, right? So this is the terminology. We have the stem, we have the alternatives. In the alternatives, one is the key and the others are called the distractors. Now, how do we construct good multiple choice items? Now, the first starting point is to identify the learning outcome. What is the meaning of learning outcome? Learning outcome is the action that we want a student or a learner to perform, so that we know that our learning objectives have been met or not, so that we can assess whether the child has gained mastery over the objective that the teacher had in mind. So that is what the learning outcome defines, right? So when we are writing the learning outcome or we want to identify the learning outcome, there are two things that we have to decide. What is it that the student should know? And what should the student be able to do? What is it that the students should know, or what is it that we want the student to know, and what is it that we want that student should be able to do, so that we assess whether our learning objective has been met or not. So what should the student know means we are talking about the content topic, but not only topic, we are also in the topic. There can be many kinds of knowledge that we want to test. So what, it's not sufficient to decide the topic. We also should know whether we are testing the factual knowledge, or we are going to test conceptual knowledge, whether we are going to test the procedural knowledge, or we want to test the metacognitive knowledge. Factual knowledge means facts, principles, laws. Conceptual knowledge means what are the concepts, how quantities are related to each other, how changing one will affect other one. Procedural knowledge means what are the different methods of arriving at something, or what is the process one has to undergo, or what is the process a plant undergoes to get energy, things like that. And finally, metacognitive is thinking about our own thinking. So, what are the strategies for improving our understanding, or what are the strategies for improving memory? So, these kind of knowledge is metacognitive knowledge. So, first thing that we have to decide before writing the learning outcome is content topic and the kind of knowledge that we want to test. The second is the what should the student be able to do. That means what cognitive process we want him to perform. And from where we will get this cognitive process? From the Bloom's taxonomy. Whether we want the child should be able to remember some fact, or we want that he demonstrates his understanding of some knowledge, or we want him to apply his knowledge and answer a question, or we want him to analyze certain data which is given, or we want him to evaluate between some choices or some model for its effectiveness and things like that. So when we combine the content topic and cognitive process, we get the learning outcome. And each item should be constructed to assess only one learning outcome, not more than one learning outcome. So a good MCQ begins with identification of the learning outcome, what we want the student to know, and within that content topic and knowledge, what action or what cognitive process we want the student to perform. So let me give you some examples of how different learning outcomes and different content topics can be taken up. So first is, let us look at this MCQ. Which of the following relates to recall of procedural knowledge? So I have given you 4 options. Now write down in the chat box what is the correct option. What is the correct answer? That is, which is the key. Which of the following relates to recall of procedural knowledge? So please write in the chat box and be able to see your answers. So some Vinita ji is saying D. Renu ji is also saying it is D. Everyone seems to be saying it is D. Jitendra ji is saying A, but I can see most of them are D. But you see, D is what are the different strategies for retaining information. This relates to metacognition. But the question is asking for recall of procedural knowledge. That means you are asking for for knowledge of some procedure. So which of the options is asking about a procedure? D is not a C. Yes, Poonamji is written finally correctly. C is C is not a procedure. C is symptoms of exhaustion. That means this is a this is a conceptual knowledge. B, what is the method of giving CPR? Are you aware what is the meaning of CPR? Yes, what is CPR? This is the method. See, the word method should have given you a clue that we are talking about a method or a process. So that is what this question is, what relates to procedural knowledge and its recall. So this is an example of procedural knowledge. Now, supposing I change the question and I say, which of the following relates to recall of factual knowledge? If I say which one of the following relates to recall of factual knowledge, what will be your answer? What will be your answer if I change the question for factual knowledge? Yes, it will be A. What are secondary colors? And if I say relates to recall of metacognitive knowledge, then you are going to write D. And if I say recall of conceptual knowledge, you are going to write C, right? So this was to clarify the different kinds of knowledges. Now look at this question. A pendulum consists of a sphere hanging from a string. What will happen to the period of the pendulum if the mass of the sphere is doubled? Assume that effect of air friction and mass of string are negligible and the sphere traces an arc of 20 degree and a plane as it swings. And then there are four options given. So now look at the content. What is the content? It is about law of masses related to simple pendulum, but it is asking for conceptual knowledge because it is asking for the relationship between two different quantities related to a simple pendulum. And what do you think is the cognitive process that it is asking for? From Bloom's taxonomy, can you recognize what is the process, cognitive process it is asking for? I'm not asking for the correct answer. We are talking about the learning outcomes related to each question. Right now, I want you to identify that what are the two parts of the learning outcome related to this question. First part is content. Content topic is law of masses and the knowledge is conceptual knowledge. Now I want you to tell me what is the cognitive process that we want the student to perform in this question. The cognitive process is understanding. We want the understanding of the relationship between mass and time period, right? And so what is the learning outcome? The student identifies the effect of changing a parameter of simple pendulum. That is the learning outcome that we wanted, and that is why we have framed this such a question. Now I'll show you another question. Now look at this question. In the diagram, parallel light rays pass through a convex lens and converge to a focus. They can be made parallel again by placing a... Now there are 5 options. I don't want you to tell me the correct option. I want you to tell me what is the content that this question is addressing and what type of knowledge this question is addressing. Which topic does it relate to? Write in the chat box. Everybody can see what topic it is. Light, or specifically it relates to lenses, right? So it relates to lenses. And then what kind of knowledge are we wanting? Factual or conceptual or procedural or metacognitive? Well, again, we want a factual knowledge, because if the child understands that if a convex lens is kept at focus, the light ray will pass through it parallel. And then we want the cognitive process to be the process of applying, because the fact about convex lens, how the rays are made parallel, the child is required to apply. So the learning outcome was identifies the correct application of a principle related to convex lens. So once we have identified this learning outcome, we have framed this question. Now, look at this. A group of friends lives in a house divided into one flat per floor. Sharon is in the flat below Charu and Meena is in the flat above Sana. Sana is in the flat below Sharon and Charu lives with Rupesh. Paras lives on the top floor. Who is in the bottom flat? Now, I don't want you to answer the question. Again, I want you to think of the learning outcome. What learning outcome must have been thought by the teacher so that she framed this question? So, the content is spatial arrangement of flats and its conceptual understanding is asked because what the child, it's for a very young child, and the child must be able to understand where which person is placed, higher, above, lower, 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 which is in the bottom level. And the cognitive process is analysis. The child has to analyze this. So the learning outcome is analyzes the situation and identifies patterns and relationships. So once we identify the learning outcome, then we frame the right question which will address that learning outcome, which will allow us to assess that learning outcome. Now look at this. The question says, evaluate if Keshav's model shown on the right correctly represents the role of oxygen and sunlight in plant growth. Identify which of the following corrections are needed in the model. Oxygen is released. Oxygen does not help make sugar. Part of leaf covered in foil receives light from sun. Sugar is only produced on side of leaf, not covered by foil. Now, what learning outcome would have been in teacher's mind? Teacher must, it's clearly written here that the teacher wants the learner to evaluate this model and specifically evaluate what? Role of oxygen and sunlight in plant growth, right? So the content must be photosynthesis and procedure of photosynthesis or the process of photosynthesis. So it is procedural knowledge and cognitive process is evaluation. So the learning outcome is evaluates a model representing roles of oxygen and sunlight in plants. So this is what the teacher wants to evaluate. Teacher wants to assess whether the learner or the student can evaluate a model representing roles of oxygen and sunlight in plants or not, right? So this is how we will first, I was going the reverse direction. I showed you first the example of MCQ and then made you think what must have been the learning outcome. But when we are like writing the MCQ, first we will decide the content, then the cognitive process that we want to assess, and then we will combine them to write the learning outcome that we want to assess. And that will give us the background for writing the MCQ. Okay. So this was the first step, that identify the learning outcome. Going forward, next we have to create a STEM, but the STEM should be effective. So what is the criteria for an effective STEM? First of all, it should be narrowly focused only on one concept or one principle or one procedure. Not multiple ideas should be put in the same STEM. Then it should include a visual if it helps the student to understand the problem. For example, in the last example, we had the visual of the leaf and the sunlight because it was clarifying the model given by Keshav. Then the STEM should be meaningful by itself. Along with the visuals, when we use the STEM, when the learner reads the STEM, it should make sense. Without looking at the options, he should be clear about the question that is being asked, and standing alone, the STEM itself should be such that the child can clearly understand the problem without looking at the options. Then it should be very clear and understandable. The language should not be confusing and it should be easy to understand. The stem should be concise, means it should use as limited words as possible, and it should use appropriate vocabulary. It should not be insulting to any caste, creed, or race, and the vocabulary should be of it should be graceful, it should not be cheap vocabulary, and it should not have unnecessary information which will not be used by the child to come at the answer. And then it should include as much of the item as possible. We try to include less detail in options and more in the items. And then we should avoid negative stems unless it is necessary. And where is it necessary? Only where we want to assess whether the child knows about unsafe or dangerous practices or not. And when we are using the negative stem, we should highlight the negative indicator. I'll be giving you a lot of examples. So going forward, we will have examples. And then the wording, the idea of the stem is not to confuse or trick the student. We should always write the stem in such a way so that we can help the student arrive at the correct answer by going through the required process. We are not to give clues in the stem, but at the same time, the language should not be consciously adopted to confuse the child or to trick the child. Okay. And then the next step that we do is write the correct solutions and answers ourselves on a paper. Now, normally we have MCQs which require only one correct answer, but then we can also have MCQs where there are multiple correct answers. So if you're going for multiple correct answer type MCQ, first write down all of your solutions or answers. Then identify the common errors that students normally make in answering such questions or the misconceptions. So this is the key to writing good MCQs, because this gives us valid distractors which will be very close to the correct answer. And these will come from misconceptions. Now, from where do you get the misconceptions? You get misconceptions from the descriptive answers the children might have written in exams or in the classroom when they are answering. So it is very important to listen to the answers that the children give in the classroom or when they write answers in question paper. Note down those misconceptions then and there when you are checking the notebooks, because that is where you have the bank of distractors which will help you in future. And then common errors. These also you will get from checking of your answer papers or assignments that you are checking. And it's best to use to write down these at that time only, because then again they will be helpful for forming MCQs in future. And then when we have written these correct solutions and we have written the misconceptions and common errors, now we come to the stage where we can create the alternatives. We have already created the stem. Now we want to create the alternatives. So what are the good criteria for creating the alternatives? When we write the correct answer, that is the key in the alternatives, we should adopt our solution or answer that we had written earlier by proper phrasing so that it becomes a good alternative and it should be easy to understand. Then how to write the distractors. Now, when we are writing the distractors, obviously we are going to use the misconceptions and common errors that we noted down earlier. We will use only one misconception or error per distractor. We will not combine them together. Then we will use only plausible distractors. Plausible means which sound true. It should not happen that we are talking about animals and we give one of the plants, one of the distractors as a plant. That is too obvious a wrong answer. So these should be plausible. Then we should have functional distractor. Functional means which are opted by more than at least 5% of students. If they are not opted by even 5% of students, that means it is too obviously a wrong distractor. Then we should be using words that ring a bell or that sound official but are incorrect, right? So these are some of the techniques by which we can make good distractors. So overall, what are the criteria for writing good alternatives? First of all, they should be mutually exclusive. That uh, two distractors should not be inclusive of each other. I'll give you some examples. Remember this criteria. I'm going to give you a lot of examples and ask you to identify whether the question has a good stem or it has a good alternatives or not. Then all the alternatives should be in some logical order. Maybe they should be alphabetic. If there are numbers, the numbers should be either in increasing order or decreasing order. There should be some kind of internal logical order. Then the grammar should be consistent with the stem. When you read the stem and then the alternatives, they should be compatible, consistent with each other. Then we should avoid keywords which will give a clue to the correct answer. The alternative should be similar in length, and we should not use specific determiners like always or never. We should also avoid the use of distractors like all of the above, none of the above. Why we should do that, I will talk about it in a future slide. Now that we know how to create the correct key, how to create distractors, and what are the criteria for writing overall alternatives. Now, what we will do, we will write down the rationale for each distractor. Once we have formed the key, we have formed the stem, we have formed the distractors. Now we must write down why we selected each distractor. This is a very important step which is often neglected. But why is it important? Because today you may remember why you have written a particular distractor. Tomorrow you may forget. Now, if you're going to use the same question again, you may not remember why you used a particular distractor, how it was very close to the key. And that's very important because that's how we can really assess the specificity of the child's knowledge and cognitive process. So if you have written a particular distractor and for a particular reason, we should note it down then and there. And also sometimes it is important when we share our MCQs with other colleagues, then the colleagues might want to know that what is the reason for choosing a particular distractor. So it's always a good policy to write the reason for choosing a particular distractor. Also, if some of you are engaged in item writing assignments for different publishers, or there are many agencies like you may be writing questions for NEET exam or maybe for other exams. In that case, you are required to give the reason for writing a particular distractor. So it is better that you become habituated to this. Okay. Now assign a difficulty level to your MCQ. How do we assign that? We can have 3 difficulty levels: easy, moderate, and challenging. How we decide that? Initially, it is very tough for us because for us, every question will be easier than it is for our students. But, and also the difficulty level will vary. It will depend upon the current knowledge of the student or the skill of the students. It may vary from class to class, year to year, school to school, location to location. So then how do we decide? The best way is you view the entire class as a group and then estimate that how many do you expect to give the correct answer for this item. If 50% or more you are expecting that they will give correct answer, then your difficulty level is easy. That is number one. But if you are expecting 15% or less students to give correct answer, That means it's a challenging difficulty level. That is number 3. And if you are expecting between 15 to 50%, obviously then it falls in the category of moderate difficulty. That is number 2. So this is the full procedure of writing good uh, MCQ. Now we know the terminology, what is a stem, what are the alternatives, what is key, what is distractor. We also know the criteria for writing effective stem. We have also learned the criteria for writing the key and the distractors and the overall alternatives. And then we have also learned how to assign a difficulty level to the MCQ. Now I'm going to give you some MCQs and you can examine them and write in the chat box whether they are effective as the question asks. So now there is a MCQ. You to tell me, is the stem an effective stem? I'm only asking you to assess the stem, not the whole MCQ. So which of the following is a true statement? And then there are some statements. Do you think that it is an effective stem? How many of you think that it is effective? Okay, so I find that most of you are saying yes, but no, it is not an effective stem. I told you the criteria for one of the criteria for effective stem is standing alone by itself, it should be meaningful. Now, if you hide the options and just read the stem, which of the following is a true statement? Can you answer this question without looking at the options? No, you cannot. And that is why the stem is not meaningful by itself. So it is not a good stem. It is not an effective stem. Now, how do we improve it? The better stem is this. What characteristic is relatively constant in mitochondrial genomes across species? Now, even if the child does not read the options, he can still answer the questions. And then when he can answer the question in his mind, then he will go to the options and choose the correct option. So we are not looking at the correct options, not looking at your knowledge of biology. I am only asking you to assess the effectiveness of this stem. And what are the criteria? One of the criteria was STEM in itself should be meaningful. It should clarify the question so that the student is able to answer without looking at the options. Okay. The next one, look at this. Mitochondria evolved from free-living bacteria that could carry out oxidative phosphorylation. For this reason, they have circular genomes that reproduce independently of nuclear genomes. What characteristic is relatively constant in mitochondrial genomes across species? Is it effective or not? Now, please write in the chat box, is this effective stem or not an effective stem? If it is, why you think so? If not, why not? So many of you are saying that yes, some of you are saying no. So give me the reason. Why do you think that it's a good stem? And if you're saying no, it is too lengthy. No, it can be lengthy. That is not a problem. No, it is not an effective stem. You see, it contains a lot of irrelevant material. What characteristic is relatively constant in mitochondrial genomes across species? To answer this, you do not require the knowledge which is given earlier. I have repeated this question from the last slide so that you would be able to understand that all this information was useless, right? So you have to be really very, very alert as to what are the criteria for an effective stem and whether it is applying here or not. Now look at this. If the pressure of a certain amount of gas is held constant, what will happen if its volume is increased? Now tell me, is it a standalone stem? Is it giving the unnecessary information. What do you think, whether it is effective or not effective? Yes, no, again it is not effective. It does not include as much of the item as possible. You look at the options. The temperature of the gas will, the temperature of the gas will, the temperature of the gas will. It is repeated so many times in the alternatives. But we said that the stem should include as much of the item as possible. And therefore, this is not a good stem. What would be a better framing? If you increase the volume of a certain amount of gas while holding its pressure constant, what happens to its temperature? It then decreases, increases, remains the same. So now most of the information is contained in the stem and not in the alternatives. I'm not wanting the correct option from you. I only wanted you to tell me whether the stem is effective as per the criteria we decided or not. Okay, so this was again not an effective stem. Now, all of the following are correct procedures for putting out a fire in a pan on the stove, except do not move the pan, pour water into the pan, slide a fitted lid onto the pan, turn off the burner controls. Now, I am telling you this is not an effective stem. But why is it not effective? Can you write in the chat box? I've told you already that it is not effective. But you have to identify now, why is it not effective? Read it carefully. Why do you think this is not effective? Yes? Answer is already in the question. No, it is. So see, this is confusing. The answer is, you are thinking that answer is already in the stem. That means it is confusing. Also, it is a negative stem and it is not highlighting that. So you see, it is negative stem, negative indicator is except, but it is not highlighted. And it is unnecessarily asking, because when should we use negative stem? Only when we are talking about some safety measures or some dangerous consequences. None of this is not uh, uh, okay. This is negative stem, but it is not highlighting the negative indicator. So a better framing would be this: all of the following are correct procedures for putting out a fire in a pan on the stove, except which one? Now they have to find out now they know that one of them is an exception. So we have to highlight the negative indicator. Now, all of the following are true about mitochondria, except that they contain DNA, make some of their own proteins, they are static. Again, this is not an effective stem. Why? Because it is not having any significant learning outcome which requires negative phrasing. Negative phrasing is required only when there is a dangerous practice or some very important precaution, like in the last question. Here they have highlighted the negative phrasing. This except is highlighted, but then it is unnecessary to give a negative question here for this. What would be a better use? A water type extinguisher is suitable for putting out a fire caused by burning of any fuel except which one of these? So here the situation is cautioning about a dangerous or danger, or about a precaution that needs to be taken. And that is why it is a judicious use of negative phrasing. And that is why the first question is unnecessary use of negative phrasing. Then why the second one is better? Because it is using the identification of unsafe or dangerous practices. Now look at this. Now I'm asking you to focus on the alternatives. I'm now not asking about the stem. Now I'm asking about the alternatives. Do you think these alternatives are well formed? How long does an annual plant generally live? Dies after first year, lives for many years, lives for more than 1 year, it needs to be replanted each year. Now tell me, do you think it is well formed alternatives? Yes or no? So, Tarun Kumarji, you have raised your hand. What do you want to ask? I have no idea because I don't think you are allowed to speak. The alternatives are not well formed. Okay, why? Why is it not well formed? What is the problem with these alternatives? Yes? What is the problem? Well, the problem is that they are not mutually exclusive. You see, lives for many years, lives for more than 1 year. The moment you're saying it is more than 1 year, it means many years, right? So that is why it does not have a single answer, right? But we were planning for a single answer, then this is not correct. So what would be a better framing? How long does an annual plant generally live? Only 1 year, only 2 years, several years. Now this is clear. Now all options are mutually exclusive. Then look at this one. Are the alternatives well formed? Consider this reaction. Fructose plus oxygen gives carbon dioxide and uh, and water. One molecule of each is taking part. Now, in this reaction, which molecule is being oxidized? Fructose, oxygen, carbon dioxide, water. What do you think? Is it a well formed question with good alternatives which are true to the criteria? What do you say? Yes or no? Are they well formed or not? Yes. I don't want you to give me compliments right now. Please write down what I'm asking. Thank you so much for your compliments, but I would be happier if you were writing the correct answers. Okay, yes, this is a good MCQ because all the alternatives are well formed, they are precise, they are clear, they are comprehensive. Not only that, they have an internal order. See, the person who has framed this has taken all the molecules in order. First fructose, then oxygen, then carbon dioxide, then water. Right? So there is a good order. It will be easy for the child to understand. Look at this. A word used to describe a noun is called an adjective, conjunction, pronoun, verb. Now, what do you say? Are the alternatives well formed? Yes or no? Write in the chat box. Yes, everybody is saying yes. I don't think so. See, the word an is giving you a clue. An can go only with adjective. So it is not a well formed because the each alternative grammar is not consistent with the stem. It is consistent with only one alternative is consistent with the stem, and therefore it is giving the clue to the child. So what would be a better framing question? A word used to describe a noun is called an adjective, a conjunction, a pronoun, a verb. Now there is consistency between alternatives and stem, and there is no clue in the alternatives. Okay? Now look at this. Which of the following would do the most to promote the application of nuclear discoveries to medicine? Promote the application of nuclear discoveries to medicine. Trained radiotherapy specialists developing standardized techniques for treatment of patients, do not place restrictions on the use of radioactive substances if the average doctor is trained to apply radioactive treatments. So, are the alternatives well formed? What do you say? Yes or no? No, they are not well formed. Why they are not well formed? Because the grammar is not consistent with the STEM. Now, what would be a better framing? Now, see this. Adding trained radioactive therapy specialists to hospital staff, developing standardized techniques for treatment of patients, removing restrictions on use of radioactive substances, training the average doctor to apply radioactive treatments. So this is how we have to make each alternative consistent with the STEM. Now look at this one. You just spent 10 minutes trying to teach one of your new employees how to change a typewriter ribbon. The employee is still having a great deal of difficulty changing the ribbon, even though you have always found it simple to do. At this point, you should, now there are options. Tell the employee this, tell the employee, review each of the steps, tell the employee. What do you think? Are the alternatives well formed? Yes or no? Yes or no? No, they are not well formed. Why? They are not in parallel form. Parallel form means similar to each other, parallel to each other's, in the same format as one of them. So how do we make it better? Now look at the alternatives. Ask an experienced employee working nearby to change the ribbon in future. Mention that you never found this difficult and ask what he or she finds difficult about it. Review each of the steps already explained and determine whether the employee understands them. Tell the employee that you will continue teaching him or her later because you are becoming irritable. Now they are having similar form. We call it parallel form. Okay. Now, which of the following is the best indication of high morale in a supervisor's unit? The employees are rarely required to work overtime. They are willing to give first priority to attaining group objectives, subordinating any personal desires they may have, blah, blah, blah. Do you think it's a well-formed MCQ with well-formed alternatives? Yes or no? Are the alternatives well-formed? No, they are not well-formed. One of them, they are not similar in length, right? So better framing would be the employees are rarely required to work. They willingly, they give priority. The supervisor enjoys staying late. The unit members give expensive birthday presents. But you see, the length is more or less the same. If the length of one alternative is long, the students are likely to go for that as the correct option. Whether it is correct or not, that is a different thing. But they will go for the longer one thinking that it is the correct. Then to avoid infection after receiving a puncture wound to the hand, you should always go to the immunization center to receive a tetanus shot. Be treated with an antibiotic only if the wound is painful. Ensure no foreign object has been left. Never wipe the wound. Now, what is wrong with this? I am telling you that these alternatives are not well. Why? Because they use specific determiners like always and never. You see this always here and this never here. So what is a better framing? Remove always and never. Go to immunization center to receive a tetanus shot. Be treated. Ensure that no foreign object has been left. Wipe the wound with alcohol unless it is still bleeding. So that is how we have to avoid use of always and never. Why do we avoid all of the above and none of the above? You see, if you use all of the above as the key, as the correct answer, then it can easily be identified by the learner by noting that two of the other alternatives are correct, right? बिकॉज अगर एक आंसर आप ऑल ऑफ द अबव है तो ऊपर वाले भी कोई भी दो अगर उसको सही लगते हैं तो वो तुरंत इस आंसर पे आ जाएगा कि ऑल ऑफ द अबव आर करेक्ट. उसको थर्ड वाला एग्जामिन करने की जरूरत ही नहीं है. आउट ऑफ द 4 alternatives, just by examining 2 he can arrive at all of the above as the correct answer. अगर आप उसको डिस्ट्रैक्टर की तरह यूज करते हैं तब भी इट कैन बी इजीली एलिमिनेटेड अगर बच्चे को एक भी इनकरेक्ट ऑल्टरनेटिव मिल गया तो तो भी आपका ये डिस्ट्रैक्टर यूजेस हो गया, क्योंकि उस केस में भी बच्चे ने चारों को एग्जामिन ही नहीं करेगा वो। अगर आप नन ऑफ द अबव यूज करते हैं आंसर की तरह तो क्या है फिर नुकसान, क्योंकि इट इज नाउ गोइंग टू मेजर द एबिलिटी टू रिकॉग्नाइज इनकरेक्ट आंसर रादर देन करेक्ट आंसर। पर हम तो चाहते हैं ना कि बच्चे की हम करेक्ट नॉलेज है या नहीं ये चेक करें, और अगर हम इसको डिस्ट्रैक्टर की तरह यूज करते हैं तो वो प्लॉजिबल ही नहीं लगता बहुत से बच्चों को, कि नन ऑफ द अबव तो हो ही नहीं सकता आंसर, ऐसा लगता है बच्चों को। सो इट इज नॉट अ गुड आइडिया टू यूज ऑल ऑफ द अबव or none of the above as any of the alternatives. Now look at this. When conducting library research in education, which of the following is the best source to use for identifying pertinent journal articles? अब आप देखिए, मैं आपको खुद ही बता देती हूँ, इट इज नॉट वेल फॉर्म बिकॉज ये क्लू दे रहा है, ये जर्नल्स लिखा हुआ है ऑप्शन बी में। तो the alternative is using the keyword journal which is there in the stem, इसलिए this is not a good example. Now look at this. Which of the following artists is known for painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel? Snoopy, James Watt, Michelangelo, Santa Claus. Do you think it is the alternatives are well formed? Do you think the alternatives are well formed? Why not? Why not? They are not, because Snoopy, James Watt, Santa Claus, any child would know that they are not plausible. ऐसा थोड़ी हो सकता है कि ये आर्टिस्ट हो, ये तो कार्टून कैरेक्टर है। एक साइंटिस्ट जेम्स वॉट था, सैंटा क्लॉज तो सबको पता है। तो इसलिए प्लॉजिबल क्या होगा कि आप आर्टिस्ट पेंटर्स के नाम लिखिए, बॉटिसेली, डा विंसी, राफेल, माइकल एंजेलो, देन इट विल बिकम प्लॉजिबल। Now look at this. What is the median of the following numbers? 15, 27, 27, 44, 67, 75 and 81. Up, these are well-formed alternatives. I am saying so. Why they are well-formed? Because all the distractors are plausible and they are placed sequentially. आप sequence देखिए, they are all in increasing order. और ये plausible कैसे हैं? अब देखिए बच्चा किस में confusion करता है? मीन, मोड, मीडियन एंड एवरेज, राइट। अब इसका एवरेज क्या है? एवरेज आता है आपका 48, तो 48 एक प्लॉजिबल डाल दिया अगर बच्चा कंफ्यूज है उससे। अगर मीन से कंफ्यूज करता है तो मीन आता है उसका, मीडियन आता है 44, मोड है सॉरी मीन है 48 एंड मोड है 27, राइट। तो अब बच्चा अगर मीडियन का सही मतलब समझता है तो वो करेक्ट आंसर दे देगा, लेकिन अगर वो मोड और एवरेज से कंफ्यूज करेगा तो वो जवाब नहीं दे पाएगा। Now obsidian is an example of which of the following types of rocks? Igneous, metamorphic, sedimentary, transparent, none of the above. Now this is not a good alternatives, क्योंकि नॉन फंक्शनल डिस्ट्रैक्टर्स है। नॉन फंक्शनल क्या होते हैं? जो कि 5% से भी कम बच्चे जिनको ऑप्ट करेंगे। अब क्यों करेंगे कम? क्यों? कोई भी बच्चा ट्रांसपेरेंट को ऑप्ट करेगा नहीं, क्योंकि उसको पता है कि ट्रांसपेरेंसी इज नॉट, कैन नॉट बी अ टाइप ऑफ रॉक, सो इट इज अ नॉन फंक्शनल डिस्ट्रैक्टर। उसकी बजाय आप कम डिस्ट्रैक्टर्स यूज करिए लेकिन फंक्शनल होने चाहिए। तो इग्नियस, मेटामॉर्फिक, सेडिमेंट्री, बस ये तीन रखिए। कोई जरूरत नहीं है कि जबरदस्ती ऑप्शंस बढ़ा दें, नन ऑफ द अबव लिख के, ट्रांसपेरेंट लिख के, ठीक है। अब लास्ट पॉइंट जो था वो ये था कि राइटिंग डिस्ट्रैक्टर रैशनल फॉर गुड डिस्ट्रैक्टर्स। तो अब देखिए, ये मैंने आपको एक एग्जाम्पल दिया है। साइंटिस्ट थिंक दैट द रॉक्स इन द पिक्चर were once a single rock. Which property of water had the most effect on splitting the rock into two pieces? Options क्या है? Water expanding when it freezes, water boiling at 100 degree, water having a density less than rock, water dissolving many substances. तो A जो है वो तो की है, क्योंकि जब वाटर एब्जॉर्ब करके एक्सपैंड करेगा तो फ्रीजिंग जब करेगा कूलिंग पर तो वो एक्सपैंड होगा और उससे रॉक फट जाएगी. लेकिन वाटर बॉइलिंग एट 100 डिग्री सेल्सियस क्यों, क्या इसको लिखने का क्या रीजन था? क्योंकि बच्चा अज्यूम कर सकता है कि बॉइलिंग वाटर विल हीट अप द रॉक and result in its separation into two pieces, which is not going to happen. Water will simply evaporate. फिर तीसरा ऑप्शन है वाटर हैविंग अ डेंसिटी लेस देन रॉक. इसका क्या रीजन है लिखने का? Because the child may associate the density difference between water and rock with water acting to split the rock. डेंसिटी डिफरेंस बच्चा सोच सकता है, हो सकता है इसके कारण रॉक फट गई हो. फिर वाटर डिसॉल्विंग मेनी सब्सटेंसेस. अब बच्चा ये सोच सकता है कि वाटर रॉक को डिसॉल्व कर लेगा अपने आप में इस तरीके से कि दो पीसेस हो जाएंगे, बीच में से डिसॉल्व कर लेगा. तो आपने यहाँ पर हर डिस्ट्रैक्टर को आपने क्यों लिखा था, इसका आपने रैशनल और रीजन यहाँ नोट कर लिया. अब हमेशा के लिए आपके माइंड में क्लैरिटी रहेगी. और आप अगर इसी क्वेश्चन को किसी और फॉर्म में लिखना चाहेंगे तो उसको बोलते हैं हम क्लोनिंग द क्वेश्चन. मतलब आप सेम क्वेश्चन को थोड़ी लैंग्वेज बदल के अगर यूज करना चाहें तो आप कर सकते हैं, अगर आपको ये रीजन लिखे हुए हों आपके पास हर डिस्ट्रैक्टर के. सो दिस इज ऑल फ्रॉम माय साइड टुडे. आई होप दिस वाज यूजफुल फॉर यू and you will be able to now construct well written good MCQs. Now these are my coordinates. If you wish to contact me, you can do this on this mobile number or email. You can look up my Facebook account or LinkedIn account for the kind of programs that I do. If you have any questions, if you have any queries, or if you have any requests for any other topic, you can message to me on my mobile or email, or if you want, you can also ask me a question now. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, I can answer. Okay, then, thank you so much for your kind words. And I hope now you'll go all out and write good MCQs. And remember to note down the misconceptions or common errors or mistakes that you come across when you are listening to the students in Viva or in classroom, or you're checking their answer books. Just don't leave any opportunity to note down what are the common errors, misconceptions, or some ideas which the student may have, which are very much misleading. Okay. Thank you so much. I'll be leaving the webinar now.